Hello everybody, and today I'd like to show you all my Project Retro Games releases. Today's video is going to be part one of a two-part series, as I have a lot of items that I would like to go over, so please sit back and enjoy the releases from Project Retro Games. For those who are unaware of Project Retro Games, PRG is a company which specialises in physical reproductions, translations and mods of retro games. Their products range from disc-based systems such as the Sony PlayStation, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, and the Neo Geo, but recently they have been dabbling in cartridge-based media with releases for the Sega Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo. Now I understand that many people have a negative view towards reproductions as a lot of sellers try to pass off their products as genuine items. I agree, this is a predatory practice. However, Project Retro Games is an example of what makes an ethical company as they market their items as reproductions, mods, or translations, in an attempt to avoid misleading their customers. PRG is open about their products in an attempt to bring gamers to play physical media that ordinarily would be out of reach. What I personally love about Project Retro Games is that they are providing a valuable service to the gaming community by keeping retro media alive. A lot of these games you can source and play online, however, PRG's releases allow collectors to play physical media on their retro consoles. This sense of nostalgia is becoming a lost art within the modern gaming landscape, so I'm glad companies like Project Retro Games are keeping this art alive. In addition to this, PRG's releases are such an aesthetically pleasing addition to the collection, as not only do they come along with full-coloured manuals, the disc artwork is some of the best I've ever seen. With that being said, I feel this is a great time to get into my Project Retro Games collection, so let's begin. The first item that I would like to show you is my modded PlayStation 1. But before I go any further, it's important that I note that in order to play some of Project Retro Games releases, you will need a modern console. This is not the case for every system, so please before you purchase from PRG, do your due diligence and make sure that you have a means to play these games. Included in this console bundle, you receive a refurbished and modded PlayStation 1 along with two PlayStation games. Included in my bundle were NBA Jam 2K22 and Resident Evil 1.5. In addition to this, the owner was nice enough to send me a disc-only copy of Cotton Fantastic Night Dreams. Let's move on to the games. Developed by Success and published by Sega, Cotton is a side-scrolling shooter, a genre which I have no experience with at all. But with that said, I'm excited to try this one out. This release applies an English translation as the original game had been published only in Japan. Recently I've seen Cotton has been a pretty popular series with a lot of remakes and translations for modern consoles, so I'm glad that I get to experience the game as originally intended. I'm happy that PRG was nice enough to include this in my order as I've been trying to broaden my taste for new games. This will be a game that I will complete when I feel like exploring something beyond the genres I originally turned to. Next up I have Resident Evil 1.5, an addition to the collection I'm very excited to have made. For those who are unaware of this release, Resident Evil 1.5 is a mod of the originally intended Resident Evil 2 before Capcom changed direction with the resulting game that we all know today. There is a long and detailed history of how this mod came about and I suggest looking into it. But this release is a great exhibition of how hard work of a fan base can revive a game that was thought to be lost. Here is a point where I should note that PRG stands out in the reproduction market, as this is a game which has many physicals from many other companies. What is clear to me is that the quality of PRG's items are beyond compare. The long boxes are an absolute treat to see, along with the custom manuals and artwork. But what really separates PRG from the rest is that their games are applied to pressed discs with amazing custom artwork. Moving to the game itself, Resident Evil 1.5 follows Eliza Walker and Leon Kennedy at the Raccoon City Police Department. However, unlike the true RE2, Eliza Walker is not included as a playable character. What's great about RE 1.5 is that it provides an insight into the intended direction of the Resident Evil series, as RE2 would have been the last game in the series if Capcom hadn't redirected their motives with the franchise. Now lastly in the PS1 bundle, I have NBA Jam 2K22. For those who are unaware of this series, NBA Jam began as a popular arcade title that made a name for itself with its exaggerated gameplay mechanics. Eventually the game was ported to home consoles, being published by Midway and Acclaim. This is a ROM hack of NBA Jam Tournament Edition, and what's special about this release is the game includes additional players not included in the game's original release. This release includes modern players such as LeBron, Kobe, Steph Curry, KD, and many more. If you haven't played an NBA Jam title before, I suggest you look into it as it is a great source of classic fun. I would really like to see this series get a remake or a remaster for modern consoles in the future. The next game I would like to show you was a title that I was very excited to see Project Retro Games release, Mizurna Falls. Mizurna Falls is a Japanese-only release that was published and developed by the now-defunct Human Entertainment. For those who are unaware of Mizurna Falls, the game was a product of the influence from Twin Peaks in Japan. Because of this, you may see a slight resemblance between other games who have taken inspiration from Twin Peaks, namely Deadly Premonition. For this release of the game, Project Retro Games applied an English translation, along with including a physical map of Mizurna Falls. This is greatly appreciated as the game is notorious for its unforgivable day and night cycle. Therefore, referring to a physical map instead of the one in-game is such an improvement on the game's flow. Considering that the game is a murder mystery, I won't go into the details. However, I will say it's such a rewarding game to play if you can get past the harsh day and night cycle. If you're a fan of Twin Peaks or Deadly Premonition, I can't recommend this game enough, so why don't you give it a try? Next up I have Tales of Phantasia, a Japanese-only release developed by Wolf Team and published by Bandai Namco. This here is my first purchase of a Tales game and I'm really excited to get stuck into it. I've been making a conscious effort to buy some of the heavy hitters of the RPG space, and having this first release in the Tales series is something I'm excited for. For this version of the game, PRG has applied an English translation, and I personally think that it's my favourite PRG release. So if you're like me and want to experience one of the great RPGs, why don't you give Tales of Phantasia for the PlayStation 1 a go? The next two releases I have here are games that I was super excited to see released by Project Retro Games, Clock Tower The First Fear and Clock Tower Collection. The first of these games, Clock Tower The First Fear, was a Japanese-only title developed and produced by Human Entertainment. The game was originally developed for the Super Nintendo, however, 2 years after the SNES release, Clock Tower The First Fear was ported to the PlayStation. This release applies an English translation, and what I find particularly interesting about this game is that it takes inspiration from Dario Argento films such as Suspiria and Phenomena. If you consider yourself a survivor horror fan, I suggest you give this game a shot, as I would consider it to be one of the staple series of the survivor horror genre. Next up I have the Clock Tower Collection, which includes both Clock Tower 2 and Clock Tower Ghost Head. What's important to note about these releases is that the Japanese titles are titled differently to the North American releases, so this may be a little confusing. Each of these titles are the Japanese version of the games with English translation patches, however they are named according to the American release. Like the first title in the series, the games are point-and-click survival horrors. However, whereas Clock Tower 2 is a sequel to the first game, Clock Tower Ghost Head is a spin-off title. These two releases didn't receive the same reception as the original, however, I still believe that these games are worth a play, so don't discount them if you have the opportunity to try them. The last game I want to show you in this video is a game titled Aconcagua. Aconcagua is a Japan-only release developed by Whack Whack and published by Sony. The game is a point-and-click adventure game, and it follows the story of a revolutionary in a fictional South American country. To be totally honest, I'm not familiar with this game, however I've seen a lot of positive reviews about it online, so I'd say I'm excited to get stuck into it. All the items you have seen today are all created by Project Retro Games. If anything piqued your interest, I suggest that you take a look at their online store. They have a great variety of games for many different consoles. I'm currently eyeing off both the Resident Evil 3 The Factory mod and the long box release of Resident Evil Ultimate Director's Cut. If you haven't already, please show some support to Project Retro Games by following them on social media. And if you want to see some more content relating to PRG, check out the videos produced by Radical Reggie. He has a great selection of videos showcasing PRG's releases. I would also suggest checking out a podcast by Phil One Up Collects with the creator of Project Retro Games. They have an interesting discussion about all things PRG. I'll provide links in the description. That brings us to the end of my first Project Retro Games releases video. Thank you for watching, and if you've made it this far, please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on part 2.